not speaking and your camera is off. And then any questions that you have throughout, you can just go ahead and enter into the chat. At the very end, we'll have a Q&A and we'll try and get as many of those questions as we can. So I'm actually going to turn it over now to our new colleague, Taylor. She's going to introduce herself.
I'm Taylor Payne. I'm the new historian here at INDOT.
Very succinct, Taylor. Thank you. And now I'll actually be turning it over to David, one of our archaeologists, to kind of talk about the new SAA style guide changes.
Hi everyone, I'm Dave Walden, archaeologist INDOT. And if you weren't aware, as an archaeologist, the SAA has gone and made a actually fairly significant update to their style guide in December 2023. And as you know, INDOT CRO uses the SAA style guide as sort of its basis for do's and don'ts when it comes to formalizing your reports for us. And so that being said, I decided to go through the style guide and sort of look at it from the lens of, what might have been updated from the past, and as well as just sort of recent comments we've been making on reports, and to give you some background of where those areas are within the most current version of the SAA style guide. So the first one that's queued up here is diversity and inclusivity in language. And the main one for that, I know that many of you archaeologists have noticed out there, is that in Shard will still use terms like prehistory, and we want to avoid using that and other Eurocentric terminology that carries an implicit colonial bias. And so we've been having you change prehistory or prehistoric to pre-contact. And so that just kind of gives you the grounding for that there, as well as making sure you always capitalize the words indigenous in native when they are used as a noun to refer to the original inhabitants of a place of collective identity and culture of indigenous native peoples. So make sure you're doing that. And just generally, make sure that you're being very specific and careful with word choices that you're making when referring to specific groups of people in, say, even cultural historical background sections of our report. Oh, just something I noticed. I know sometimes within the field, we tend to kind of oscillate, or certain journals can oscillate between AD, BC, CE, BCE. Technically, the SAA journal has AD and BC. That's not really a major concern for us as we're going through reports, but just to kind of flag that and show you, the journal is using AD and BC. Make sure you're using American English spellings. Sometimes we get things like G-R-E-Y, gray, instead of G-R-A-Y, gray. Very minor. And then just some specific terms within archaeology. I know, for example, my Microsoft Word hates it when I try to use rock shelter as one singular word, but that is the correct way to do that one. So if you're wondering about specific words that are unique to archaeology, make sure you search through the guide to see what they have there. Oh, I just noticed that obviously we work in the Eastern Woodlands, so that's the way that should be formatted there. And make sure that you're capitalizing names of archaeological classes and types, but place generic terms in lowercase. So a Clovis point would look like that, so on and so forth. Oh, everyone, very important. The Oxford comma, make sure you use it. If you have someone debating you, you can say it's in the SAA style guide. You use the Oxford comma. Make sure we don't get this one that much every once in a while. Use of et al is limited to within the parentheses of an in-text citation. So when you're spelling something out, you'd say Covine and others, or Kuhn and colleagues. I just thought this was interesting. We have not come across this, I think, to any of our knowledge, the use of AI-generated text in reports, but we're well into the 2020s here, and AI is very much with us. So apparently the SAA is all over that already. So I guess if you're trying to use some form of AI generated text. There's just alerting you to that there is a section on the SAA style guide for that. Table. When it comes to tables, try to make sure that your tables are very readable at a glance. Avoid using any, kind of just many abbreviations and acronyms within tables. And then if that can't be avoided, make sure that you're completely spelling out what those acronyms mean in table captions or off of those captions. This is something I've been running across. This is not something that's really new, but something I've been running across quite frequently in reviewing reports is making sure that you're citing every figure that you have provided within the text, linking it within the text to the end of the file where all your figures are living. We do search for those and make sure that they're all numbered accordingly. Just make sure that the report's readable and makes sense. Similarly, just something to flag, right? Make sure you're citing all the references you cite within the text in the references cited section. I know you all know this, and we try on our end just to help you if we notice, oh, hey, this one's not in the list. Make sure you put it in there. Make sure you use complete first names and middle initials for authors. Sometimes we get reports that everything is, initialed out, and it really helps you as a researcher trying to find the source if that full first name is included there. And we're almost to the end here. In fact, I got to move my little icon for the meeting. This was a section, I don't know if this was new or not, and new as in what was the version prior to December 2023. I just, in reading this fully over again, noticed that there is a way to, and a standard format, if you will, or sort of mechanism to cite indigenous and traditional knowledge. And I do run across that every once in a while with certain reports where certain tribes do have, formal kind of means of passing down that traditional knowledge that makes its way into archaeological reports. So that's there. And I guess the biggest kind of elephant in the room when it comes to the new SAA style guide, just kind of scroll here generally. If you notice, it's probably because the SAA is concerned about space when it comes to printing their journals. What they are now doing with references cited is, you remember as we used to have just the author line on the top, and so just, sorry, the mouse is not helping, really not helping. Wow, it's really not helping. Anyway, the author line would be on the top, and then you'd get the year and the title on the second line below it. The archaeologists at INDOT have discussed very briefly among ourselves, and we're not exactly the biggest fans of this new kind of crunching of all of the information together within citations. So feel free to use the previous, for 20 plus years way that references cited had been sort of blocked out within the references cited list. So you do not need to worry about completely revamping your existing, bibliographies that we know you have on hand to go to this new style. If you're still using the old way, that's fine by us. And then the CRO manual.
I would say do more than feel free to use the old style. Please continue to use the old style. That would be our preference.
That is our directive.
Yeah.
Our directive for you is to use the old style. That we definitely prefer.
I think the new style would only slow down our reviews. It's not something we're currently interested in.
Yes, yep. New style will slow us down. And when it comes to the CRO manual, we would like you to cite the CRO manual as an electronic document. That's just something that comes up every once in a while. Any other reminders or thoughts on style guide? Sounds good. On to the next.
I love you guys are like, please don't embrace change.
On this one part.
Please don't embrace change. Not today. All right. So just a few, are you still showing your?
Yeah, just.
Okay, I was so confused. Just a few reminders. We do have a new NPPA Section 1 form, so be sure to use that from now on when we're submitting NPPAs. And also when you're completing NPPAs, I know we always say this, but you know, I've got to be a mom. Please make sure that you're filling out all of the information, following directions, things along that line. One such thing is relating to the historic bridge inventory. We've had some submissions where people aren't filling in that the bridge is non-historic according to the inventory and are instead saying that it's just a common type. And while it is true that it is a common type, it's more correct to use the inventory. So we really need that page number that lists it as non-historic. It's really useful to use the huge inventory that we do have available. In relation to various documents being submitted, we have template language for it. Please use the template language. That speeds up the review process. It makes it a lot easier kind of on everybody, both on our end and on y'all's end. The template language just makes everything very consistent across the board. And since a lot of these things are being signed by INDOT, it's good to have that consistency across our document types. In terrible, sad news, bias will no longer be available at the end of this month. Yes, I would play taps, but I don't know how. Bias will no longer be available, so we will have to all use ITAM. I don't know if anybody else is at road school in the ITAMs training, but that was stated. So just to have on everybody's radar, make sure if you need ITAMs access, that you have ITAMs access, because bias will be going away. And then finally, any new submissions of any document type need to go to the ESD CRO at indot.in.gov email. That just makes sure that we can kind of track everything properly. So once a document's been reviewed, then it can just come back directly to that reviewer. But when you're submitting a new ECL, new HPR, new archaeology report, all of that fun stuff, please make sure that you are submitting directly to the ESD CRO email. Okay, and then I believe I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Clint. He's going to do just like a quick training session for everybody.
All right, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. just
Yes,
making
thank
sure.
you.
Thank you. One moment while I share my screen. My apologies. Yay. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about drawing an APE. This isn't meant to be all inclusive. It's just kind of a rundown. We've had some questions here recently from several consultants about APEs. So we thought it would be a good idea to just kind of chat about it a little bit. As you know, the APE needs to include any properties that would have any potential effect to them. This is typically going to be through sight lines. The project scope can help dictate what the appropriate APE would be and how far to extend it. So for instance, if you're just doing a simple road widening, it would definitely be appropriate to have properties that were just immediately adjacent. In this case here that you see in front of you, this is the bridge replacement. No widening, no raising, just a simple bridge replacement. So the first thing that we would need to do, let's take a look from the project area and see what we see. So we're up on the north end of that project area. As you can see, we got a property here. You can see a property over here and a property over here. It's pretty arborous here. A lot of trees. We're going to travel down to the south side. A little quicker would be nice, but so we got a few houses next to it. Again, we have a lot of trees.
Google really wants you to enjoy the journey.
I know.
It's a struggle.
So if we look in this area, there's a lot of coverage. Let's see the house down here, got a building here. You can sort of see the top of the building up here. Where we got properties, just kind of in this open clearing. So, with that being said, we're gonna come back out of that. And again, this was the north side, so we have that kind of farm manufacturing building up here, got a couple of houses here. Got a few houses that you could see. Here's that gas station and here's that two-story brick house. Here's all the trees that we kind of were looking at. So I'm gonna switch maps. Oh, oh. There we go. Here's our project area. This shows our chart information. We've got an outstanding at National Register listed house here. We got a notable here. Notable here. We have demolished property here. So how would we draw the APE? So a lot of consultants that we see drawing APEs will simply buffer it, which is acceptable. If you go into the CRM, it'll even give you kind of hints on how far to draw it out. But in this case, I'm not sure that a buffer would be the best bet because we have this property that's pretty far out here, but if you buffered it, it would extend out into the town. And this far down does not seem like an appropriate APE given the tree cover and the buildings, right? So, and this one might be best to draw freehand. So, there's not 100% one right way to do it. Everybody's a little bit different. So I'm going to show you the way I would personally do it. And I want to stress here that we are not in the business of dictating a qualified professional historian's recommendations or their APE limits. They simply have to make sure that they make a strong enough case as to why the APE is appropriate and why a particular building is either eligible or not eligible. Whether we agree 100% or not, if you make the case, you should be good. So, with that being said, again, bridge replacements. So we have this heavy tree line. So starting here, while it may seem intuitive that this National Register property would be included, you can't see it. The scope of the work isn't going to really impact it because the bridge isn't being raised or lowered. In fact, this project was initially slated to go through an NPPA, but was knocked out of the NPPA due to archaeology. So me personally, I would start it here, draw the line, capture these properties that are immediately adjacent because you have this thick tree line, there's nothing back here. Come up in here, follow this tree line here for the sight line. Follow this sight line here. We've captured this property here, so that's appropriate. I'll bring it over to this parcel line here and drop it south. A note about parcel lines should not be your determining factor for an APE, but they can be a helpful guide if there's nothing back behind it or it seems like an appropriate kind of endpoint. So for in this case, I'm drawing it here because it seems like a natural endpoint. There's nothing here. If there was a house right here, obviously, and it's clearly visible, we'd have to extend it, but this seems like a natural endpoint for the APE. So I would probably bring it along these sight lines here. So So you've got trees and some houses here, so that's immediately adjacent and definitely visible within the project area, so we want to make sure that we're including it, so I would drop it down here. That includes those properties. Now, here is the kind of the tricky part where I kind of discussed, you have to make your case. And why you feel that it is an appropriate APE. I want to zoom in here a little bit. So what do we do with this notable right here? So going back to the, I'm not going to go back to the street view, but if you remember back from the street view, this wasn't super visible. You could see the top story, but you couldn't see it from the road. So depending on how strongly you feel, you could either bring the AP down to include it, or you could draw it here. Now, why is that? Number one, it's on the opposite side of this road here. The scope of the work is pretty minor. The bridge back here it's just a simple replacement. And also the fact that we have this modern gas station right here obstructing the view. Again, I think you could make the case for either to include it or not. But again, you have to make a strong enough case as to why. You can't just say, we didn't think it needed to be in there. Tell us why. And again, you note that intervening buildings and on the other side of the street. So anyways, me personally, I would probably line it up on this north side of the street and right here. This property right here was not really visible from the street, so I think that it's appropriate to exclude it. Now, I'm going to kind of leave a final caveat here is we are not in the business of trying to draw APEs to exclude resources. So I'm going to make that very clear, but depending on a particular project and the project scope, it may not really be appropriate to bring that one in because for certain features such as this right here, it's totally screened and it's got some distance from the project area, from the terminus of the project area, I might add. This is probably going to be just road work with the actual work thing here. So in my mind, it would be appropriate to not extend it that far. Again, this is just kind of just a quick and dirty overview. Please check our CRM for further guidance. And with that, I will let anybody ask questions.
So if anybody has questions about what we've just talked about or just general CRO questions, you can either put them in the chat or use the hand raise function and we can kind of go through those. We have some time. If somebody just raised your hand, you can unmute. It loses me every time I go in there to look. Oh, in the chat. Oh, a general introduction on all the recently new CRO staff.
Hi, Sam. Dawn Alexander, everybody.
Hello, Dawn.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Sam. My name's Dave. I've been here just over a year now.
Yeah.
And I live out in the far eastern perimeter of Indiana, Richmond, Indiana. And been primarily doing, in recent months, Greenfield and Crawfordsville district projects. Of course, we all get projects from all over the place, but I guess that would be something to maybe generally point out is right now in terms of our distribution of work, Kaylee Bloom is doing the northern half of the state, LaPorte and Fort Wayne districts. I'm doing this Greenfield, Crawfordsville, and Dawn Alexander's doing the southern half of the state, Vincennes and Seymour.
I'm Haley, I'm the oldest new. I was a historian, I am now the historic bridge specialist. But I've been here for a little while, which is cool.
And again, I'm Taylor. I live in Indianapolis. And I'm a historian. I've been here since October.
House Ravenclaw.
What?
House Ravenclaw.
Yes.
I can sort of kind of take that. Yeah, Doug, we got your email. My apologies for not responding to that. Hold tight. We're discussing that in internally here at CRO. We've never really come across that. You know, there's two sides of the equation. We're, you know, kind of concerned about blind carbon copy. You know, section 106 is meant to be a transparent process. So we're a little concerned about that, but we're kind of working through that, and we'll get back with you on the best way to proceed with that. So just hang tight, and we'll definitely have an answer by the next round of documents that we have to distribute. But thanks for asking that question.
Okay, so for the MPPA review queue, they do go through both above ground and archaeological reviews simultaneously. It's not a sequential process. And I don't know if that fully answers your question. If it doesn't, feel free to follow up.
I think she might be alluding to the fact that here recently, I'm sorry, Hannah, were you speaking? I'm speaking back here, so, but the fact that the above ground right now is typically getting finished before archaeology, so it might give that illusion that it's a sequential process. It's just that due to our workload and staffing and such, and our internal review, you know, QA/QC, that the archaeology is just taking a bit longer right now, oftentimes than the above ground. So they are getting assigned at the same time, and we're working through them as quickly as possible. Matt, if anything to add to that?
I guess I would just take that opportunity to remind people that the archaeology unit is still suffering from the lack of a full-time dedicated team lead. Attempting to cover that as well as I can, but it does add some additional time to the process. And I know that people are concerned about our turnaround times, so I guess I will throw out the fact that I did recently have reason to review our turnaround times, and over a period of the last 6 months, over a period of the past 6 months, our turnaround times for archaeological phase 1As, for historic property short reports and full historic property reports, and for MPPAs. The average for those is within that 25 to 30 business day window that we've been citing. In fact, they're very solidly within that, except for full historic properties reports, which are averaging about 32, 33 days. So they're slightly outside of that window, but it's very close to the range. If you're aware of how averages work, you'll probably realize that means some of those reviews take longer than that 25 to 30 business day turnaround time that we quote, but others will take less. So on average, we really are within that window, even though I know the ones that take longer will give the overall impression that we're maybe fairly far outside of that. But all in all, we are within, on average, the turnaround time that we're citing, and our goal is to not only remain within it, but to reduce the sort of the standard variation around that mean, so that we're gonna have fewer things that fall longer than that time period. Hopefully more that fall shorter.
I will leave most of this up to the archaeologists in the room since they're a little more knowledgeable. But in regards to tribal consulting parties, they're sent a separate, their contact information is sent separately. They're on an email that only goes to tribes. So your average public consulting parties are not on that email. It would not have, I don't think we've had any, I don't think the tribal consulting parties have been the ones that are concerned about anonymity. And they're on their own separate email to protect that anonymity.
All communications with tribal nations for federally funded projects go through the Cultural Resources Office. So they're all from INDOT federal highways. They're never third parties coming from consultants or anything like that. So yeah, there's never a reason for us to divulge those, and we do not. If a project is going to take greater than the 25 to 30 business days, is there a way for us to let you know? That is a more difficult thing to do. If we had a good way to estimate at the outset, but it's dependent upon so many things. And that includes things that are somewhat outside of our control and difficult to foresee, like requests for expedited reviews, for instance. If we receive requests for expedited reviews, and I think in the first 3 months of this year, we've had, don't know the specific number, but it's more than I think we can remember having had in that same time period. Each one of those, expediting one project, effectively pushes all other projects farther down in the queue. The greater the number of expedited review requests, the farther back everything else gets pushed. And the amount of time that it would take us to keep track of that and recalibrate due dates on the fly as things happen would extend our review times even more, to an extent where that's just not practical. So we realize that this is an issue, and you would really like to know for those projects that take longer than the average and go outside of those 25 to 30 business days. Right now, we don't have a good solution to let you know that prior to the point at which it is starting to go beyond that 25 to 30 business days. And I think you're also aware of that. So it's feel free to keep inquiring. A lot of times we don't have a solid estimate to give you, unfortunately. And that's just something, again, that is largely has to do with the fact that, on the archaeology side, for instance, the MPPAs are taking longer. I don't think, our longest tenured archaeology staff member has been here for 2 years. Everyone else has been here less than that time. And during that time period, they have not had a manager. And so, as everyone is becoming better trained. And so as we fill our remaining positions and train those people, and we have a full-time dedicated manager for the archaeology staff, you can expect to see that things will start to return to the way they were sort of in the pre-turnover days prior to the beginning of 2022. And so I apologize, I don't have more concrete information to give you at this time, but we are trying our best, and, you know, we have not enough people trying to do too much stuff, and that's just kind of where we are at the moment. But hopefully, greater days ahead.
I would add that if don't contact I would recommend not contacting us until that 30-day business days is up. But at that point, if you know who your reviewer is, go ahead and shoot them an email. That's not a problem. We'll look at it. We might have a better idea at that point where it's at in our queue. And if you don't know who your reviewer is because it was an initial submission, send it to the ESD CRO inbox, and someone will forward it to the correct reviewer at that time, and then you can correspond with them.
Will asked, how often are we consulted by the districts or others when the overall project schedules are put together? That's a pain point, and they don't want to ask for expedited reviews. We'll get the project as an accelerated schedule, they have no choice.
That was an interesting question, Beth. I would say that we are not often consulted when project schedules are being put together. And our impression remains, and this is an, you know, this is an ongoing issue, as I think everybody well knows, that although Section 106 is typically a critical path in each project's schedule, it may not come to us as early in the process as we would necessarily like to see it, to avoid just having something like, you know, some particular review taking an extra month in our office for some combination of reasons. Having something like that be in danger of impacting the project schedule. Having something that's sent to us as an MPPA and then turns out to require an archaeological investigation, or for some reason we find is actually not eligible to be covered under the MPPA and will require full Section 106 consultation. Things often come to us at a point in the project schedule where something like that really causes a lot of consternation and really bumps things up against the due dates, you know, for NEPA and right-of-way acquisition, and just the entire project schedule can get thrown into disarray. So that is, I think, something that we're continuing to investigate, and it's something that is a point of discussion, but yeah, I'm personally don't know that we're often people's first consideration. Yeah, yeah. Share your pain.
Does anybody have any more questions? All right, well, if everybody's all finished, of course, you guys can always reach out to CRO at any time and ask us questions. We're always happy to answer any of those. But thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate being able to kind of have this communication with everybody and be able to kind of update and answer questions and all that fun stuff. So looks like we're done just a little bit early. Everybody have a great day, and we'll see you all throughout the rest of the year. Thank you.